Welcome to the Rusted Garden. For 2018, I'm going to be doing a new series called The Rusted Garden Show. It's going to be about 20 or 30 minutes. Maybe I'll make 2 or 3 episodes a month, and it's going to focus on a specific subject. And today, we're going to focus on seed starting indoors. I'm going to go over starting mix basics, the different seed cells, the different trays, and we're going to go over there to my lighting area where I will talk to you about how do you set up a lighting station so that you can give your plants enough light so that they grow indoors and they don't get leggy. When a plant gets really thin and tall, that's called legginess, and that's just not going to be a healthy transplant. And we'll solve the issues that cause that. For 2018, I want to wish you all happy holidays, happy new year, and what I really hope is that you and your family find a better quality of life for 2018. If our life can get a little bit better each year, then life is going pretty good. And of course, I hope you have a successful garden. Let's get started with the seed cells. Now there's a couple different things you can buy. A seed cell is basically where you drop the seed and you let it start growing indoors. These are Jiffy strips. This is pressed peat moss, and I don't like these for 2 reasons. One, they're pressed peat moss, so peat moss absorbs liquid. So when you put your seed starting mix into here, the peat moss will wick the water away from the root system of your plant. So these dry out really, really quickly. A couple of times faster than if you start in what I prefer in these plastic trays. They also get moldy, they grow fungus on them. The fungus and stuff doesn't usually harm your plant, but it can be unsightly, and they really do pull the water away from your root system. So if you use these, you're going to have to water much more often. So I recommend you don't use them. Excuse me. Now the plastic seed cells, I recommend the 6 cell pack. This is plenty of room for your seed to be dropped and for the root system to develop. And as it gets bigger, you're going to take them out of here and put them into something like this. Now, that's vermiculite. We'll talk about that in a second. That's peat moss. Most of the time, we start our cells in a flat. And I recommend doing that because this flat is how you would water and how you would feed your plant. You just fill this up with water, drop your cells in, and they're going to bottom water. And that's how you want to water your plants. And I have a video about that. Maybe I'll link to this one too. But we're not going to talk about watering today or feeding. We're just going to be talking about the materials. So you want a tray that can hold water, and you want these seed cells. They have holes in the bottom. Again, this is for watering. 72 of these, or I'm sorry, 12 of these will fit into that. 12 of them will create 72 seed starts. For most of us, that's plenty. So when I talk about the lighting, I'm going to talk about if you're just starting, maybe 72 or a couple of tomato plants, how you would do that. And then, somebody like me, I start probably, 500-600 plants indoors. So we'll cover both of them. But you're going to want a tray, and you're going to want a seed cell, and the plastic is what I recommend. Now, you can find these at Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, and stuff like that, but you can also be creative. Now, these are peat pellets. I'll get to those. That's an alternative to using the seed starting mixes that look like this. But you can go ahead and save your plastic materials you get. This is for a sandwich. And if you're only starting, maybe 12 tomatoes, you can just pick these up. I sell these on my seed shop, but again, you can find this just about anywhere. And you would just start them just like this. This would be 6 tomato plants. That's all you really need for most gardens, are 6 tomatoes, 6 pepper plants. And again, you have a tray so we can bottom water. We'll fill this with a different mix. And then you can also close this to keep the moisture in if you want to. But this is an alternative to, using these trays. I don't want to pile that up too high. You won't be able to see. Let's drop this down there. Now, you can also get these little foil baking trays if you just are doing 6 tomato plants. And again, 6 plants is plenty for a family of 4. And you can do this, one for peppers. You could do it for eggplant, stuff like that. Now, let's talk about these pressed peat pellets. This is a way that you can start plants too. They come pressed. This is peat moss. They come in different sizes. This little size is pretty much useless, but not knowing the metric system as being born in the US, I thought that these were actually this size, so I have like 1,000 of these little pellets. Anyway, they're pressed, and all you do is drop them into warm water, and they're going to expand. We'll let them expand while I talk about seed starting mix. Now, once these expand, they get, pretty tall, and they can go into this tray. I'll show you that in a second. Seed starting mix you can buy, again, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart. You can find it online. It's completely dry. It's a combination of peat moss. This is pure peat moss, and usually vermiculite. That's all vermiculite. Now, if you want to save money, you can buy yourself a bag of peat moss and a bag of vermiculite. You want very fine vermiculite, and the ratio is about 3 parts peat moss to 1 part vermiculite, and you end up making a seed starting mix, which is basically what Jiffy is. Now, you can do a 4-to-1 ratio, but you could figure out your ratio. Sometimes there's perlite in there, but you don't really need that, but you need really a combination of peat moss and vermiculite. A 3-to-1 ratio, 4-to-1 ratio if you want to make your own. When you buy the seed starting mix, again, it's completely dry, and this is a big mistake a lot of people make. They take their seed starting cell, they put in the dry mix, put the seed in, and then they water. This is not going to absorb water. It is way too dry. This mix is actually going to float. So the first tip is get your seed starting mix, put it in a bigger bowl, and then pre-moisten it so that it's totally hydrated when you go to use it. This is what happens if you use it straight dry. You pour it in, and everything just floats. And that will float sometimes 2 or 3 days because it just doesn't absorb the water. So you have to get your hand in there and really mix it up. And then when you do, your starting mix is ready to use. And the way that I set up these seed cells is drop in the moist, pre-moistened starting mix, and then press it down, thumb pack it down. You want a nicely packed cell for your tomato plants, for your pepper plants, for your vegetables, because you don't want this to be too loose. You put a seed in, it drops down to the bottom. You want it just to be nice and dense. It'll be perfect for developing very, very healthy roots. That's how you set up your seed cells with the starting mix. The other thing that you can use is, this is a muffin tin. So you can get these large, I think these were like 55 millimeters. They are in metric, pressed pellets. This right here is big enough for a tomato plant, for a pepper plant, for it to grow into a nice, tall, seed start. What you can do is drop them right into the muffin tin. This is the smaller one. This is about 25. This is great for seed starting too, but as your tomato or pepper or vegetables got bigger, you'd have to transplant this into a bigger cup. You can use these muffin tins to just drop in these peat pellets, and this is a great way. And here's the little one that I bought. Like, what are you going to do with that? I mean, maybe it's good for herbs or starting something like that. And then you would just water, the depth of the tray here. It'll absorb the water from the bottom, and it's a perfect way to really grow transplants with the peat pellets. And this is all stuff you can buy. If you can't find the muffin tins, you can go ahead and just start them in something like this. These are the materials that you need to start growing seeds indoors, to grow your vegetables indoors. So you can go with the pre-made peat pellets that you just have to drop in water, or you can just go ahead and pack these up with your seed starting mix. Now, seed starting has, I don't know, let me just think a second. I think the biggest issue with starting seeds indoors is that you don't have enough light. So if you go through all this trouble to get things started, you don't give your plants enough light, they're going to sprout, you're going to be excited, they're going to grow, but they're going to grow really fast because they think they're in the dark. And they're going to be stretching to reach the light. And the more that they're stretching, the more they're using their energy, and the more they're growing stalk, not leaf. And you don't want that. So what do? You have to have really intense light hit the germinating seed when it comes out of the ground. That means when we go over here to the grow lights, you want your grow lights about 1 inch off the surface of your seed starts. So if you're using something like this, you want to make sure the light sits about 1 inch above that. And then you can raise your lights as the plants grow. Same thing, you want the lights to be sitting about 1 inch or 2 just above your seed starting mix. It really, really makes a difference. Now, some people have said to me, I don't want to go through the process of starting stuff in a cell like this, transferring it over to a cup, and then growing it. So you don't have to. If you know you're just going to grow maybe a half a dozen plants, you can just start with, a recycled cup that I get from my neighbors, put the starting mix right into here. This is plenty large enough to grow a tomato to this size. So you would just drop the tomato seed in there, the pepper seed in there, eggplant, whatever you want. This would still go under the lights, about this tall. You'd want it to be sitting in a tray. You can use your recycled sandwich container, and it would just sit in here, and you water from the bottom, and your lights would sit above it. And this is a great way, again, to grow transplants. And you don't have to kind of move them from these smaller cells to the bigger cells if you don't want to, but you can start them indoors. Now, the second thing that's really important, so first we had the light. If you don't have enough light, then your plants are going to struggle and they're not going to be healthy. The next biggest problem, really, is that people tend to overlove their seed starts by adding in things like Epsom salt, all kinds of organic products, all kinds of chemical fertilizers, and keep in mind that everything on the planet's a chemical, so even your organic fertilizers are chemicals. Chemical fertilizers we call synthesized, as they're kind of taken from one form to another form by people, and that is technically what we call a chemical fertilizer. But either of those fertilizers can overwhelm your plants because this is not an earth bed. There's no rain, there's no wind, there's no sunshine, there's no water rinsing through here. So if you use organic products or chemical products, Epsom salt, start putting too much stuff into here, what happens is you get a buildup of chemicals, organic or the chemical fertilizers, and it damages your root system. And then your plant's going to start looking as if maybe it's undernourished, because sometimes when you overfeed, your plant responds looking like it's underfed. And then what do we end up doing? We start giving it more fertilizer. So my tip is, don't overfeed your seed starts. Whatever you like to do, cut it down by 75%. In fact, what I recommend is getting a container, and right here it says quarter strength seed start. Whatever fertilizer you use it at quarter strength, and you don't have to start feeding these until they're really about this tall. They have their second, third stage leaves on there, and that they're really growing. When you plant a seed, the seed itself has fertilizer in it. It has what the plant needs, so it's going to establish. But if you start giving it too much love, too much fertilizers, organic or chemical, you can really damage your plants. You don't need really the liquid feeds until the plants, like I said, get about that tall. And then at that point you want to do, really I recommend a quarter strength. All right, so we've covered the seed starting trays, the cells, the different seed starting mixes, the pressed peat pellets, making sure that you pre-moisten your soil before you press in the packs. So let's say we got this all set up. I will also link videos that give you more details on how you plant seeds and stuff like that. Let's go over to the growing station, and I will talk to you about what kind of light that you want to make sure your plants grow stocky, not leggy. Now, before we get to the grow light station, there was one more tip that I wanted to talk to you about. Fungus gnats, mold, fungus, and diseases in your starting mix. Rule number one, Don't take anything from outside and bring it indoors. If you bring in any peat moss that's been sitting out there, any soil that's been sitting out there, and you bring it indoors, use it in your seed starts in some capacity, you're going to get a lot of disease and a lot of insects. Basically, everything out there has fungus spores, has eggs, all that kind of stuff. Bring it indoors, give it 75-degree temperature, no natural predators or anything like that, and the fungus, the molds, the diseases are going to take off and the insects are going to come. So use nothing from outdoors. You want a fairly sterile starting mix. Now the reason I say fairly sterile is fungus gnats are the bane of starting seeds indoors, and the eggs can last in the starting mix that is dry for a long time. So some of the ways to combat against fungus gnats is to hydrate your seed starting mix. Put the dry mix in a bowl, boil some water in a teapot, pour the boiling water into your seed starting mix. Of course, don't use your hand, and just stir in the water, the hot water, with a spoon. That will help kill a lot of the eggs. Freezing doesn't really work. They can really take freezing temperatures. The eggs survive. The other thing that you can do, and I only recommend doing this under strict supervision, is you could microwave a wet mix for 1 to 3 minutes. Because this is, something that could potentially be flammable, you got to keep an eye on it. So if you microwave at your own risk. But hot water will really make a difference. I have a video which I will link to this too. I also sell neem oil. If you're going to use neem oil in your garden, I'll link a video. Make sure you buy 100% cold pressed neem oil with the azadirachtin in it. That chemical is what kills chewing insects. Don't buy any neem oil product that says hydrophobic extract. They basically remove all the good stuff. That's just a side note. So for my starting mixes, I have a video on it. I put in about 1 to 2 teaspoons into the starting mix after it cools down and just mix it through. And that neem oil will help manage any potential insects that are in your starting mix. None of this is 100% foolproof, but if you use the boiling water, that will really cut back your chances of fungus, of diseases, and of the fungus gnats. And it's really important to try and prevent these things from happening before you get your plants growing, before you get your seeds growing, because it can really be a problem. Now you might have noticed this large pipe right here. I'm going to be doing a video in the future if you want to subscribe to my channel. This is a 10-foot piece of PVC, 4 inches wide. It's for drainage. It has some holes in it already. These are a good size for worms. I'm also going to drill in 1/2-inch holes here, cut this into 3-foot sections, sink about 2 feet into the ground. The bottom will be cut out. Worms will be able to get into here. Going to use this cap to cap the top that sits above the ground. And I'm going to fill this with my food waste, my food scraps and stuff like this. This is going to be a composting tube that you can drop right into your garden. It's good for about a 6-foot space, and I will show you how to build this and how to just drop compost materials right into this tube. Okay, now your grow light stations. Now you can set these up yourself. Now these are T8 tubes. I'll turn them on in a second. These are the thin tubes. And I believe the tubes back here are either T10s or T12s, I can't remember. But the whole key is you want to buy a fixture. This black part is a fixture that is set up for T8 bulbs. That's the best thing to use now. Some of my videos are a little bit outdated. So you want a black fixture or a white fixture for T8 bulbs, and then you want to buy T8 bulbs. It's pretty straightforward. Now, when you go to the store, you're going to see T8 bulbs that come in measures of Kelvin and measures of lumens. Kelvin really represents the kind of light it is. You want to get a Kelvin rating of 5,000 to 6,000. That's daylights, and you'll see it right on the packaging. So you can look at Kelvin, look for something between, I think it's actually 5,000 and 6,500. Now, for lumens, that's the intensity. You really want to try and find a bulb that has 2,000 to 3,000 lumens. So the higher the lumens, the more intense the light. And the higher the Kelvin, the more it resembles daylight. Now, a lot of people ask me, have you tried the LED lights? I haven't yet. They're coming down in price, and they are something that you can use to seed start. And then people ask me, well, do you recommend using white lights and red lights and blue lights? I just don't have a lot of experience with that. What I do know is that the T8 bulbs at 5,000 to 6,500 Kelvin and to 2,000 to 3,000 lumens start seeds perfectly. And the whole goal is that you want your plants, when they're starting to germinate, like I said, to be about an inch below the light. And with the different chains, you can move this up and down. Now, this is where I would seed start. I'll show you a couple examples with the stuff that we have here. And then when the plants get growing, you would move them down to here, and you might have another light that hangs here and adjusts for the height and growth of your plant. So you want to get like a 4-tier rack. This was about $49, I think, at Lowe's. And you can set up different grow light stations here. And this is perfect if you want to grow, you know, just a half a dozen plants, or if you want to get up to the bigger cell flats. And let me just show you how that works. So 72 cells right in here. These would be all seed starch. You put it under the light, you know, an inch. These bulbs don't get hot enough to damage the plant, so don't worry about that. And with this rack, you would just slide it over to the right a little bit. It overhangs, and then you could put in another flat just like this. Whoop, it's hung up on the chain. There we go. And you could slide it over here. So this setup will let you seed start 144 seed starts. Now, if you don't want to do something that complicated, you could go ahead and get a pie tin just like this, or a baking tin, and you could put in your smaller peat pellets. You could put in your seed trays just like that, your seed cells, and that would slide right under there also. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And again, the sandwich container, you just drop 2 in there, and that would fit right under here. This is for your seed starts. And then as you get down further, you can adjust different lights to do different things depending on how your, what stage your transplants are in. Now let's turn it on. Now what I recommend, all right, so we got the different kind of lighting, the different kinds of bulbs. The next question I get is, how long do you leave the lights on? So you want the germinating seeds to meet bright light. So let's say, for instance, tomatoes take anywhere from 5 to 10 days to germinate. You could leave these lights off for like 3 days, but when you get to the 3rd day, make sure you turn them on. And I recommend letting these stay on 18 hours when your seeds are germinating. Let them get more light than they need. So they're going to get 6 hours of darkness, 18 hours of light from the light, and that will keep them nice and stocky, and you're going to get really, really healthy seed start for tomatoes, peppers, or anything that you're starting. Now, it's a real pain to come down and turn this on and off, so I recommend getting a timer. Just plug these into an extension cord right into the timer, set it for 18 hours on, 6 hours off. Now, once they germinate, after they've, been growing, maybe with that intense light for 5 to 7 days, you can cut it back to 16 hours, let them grow a while. You can even then cut it back to 14 hours. That doesn't matter so much. The most important time is when your seeds germinate. That's when the most damage is done, when they don't have enough light. So let me turn on the lights. And that's the intensity that you get. And you can see the T8 bulbs. And the T8 bulbs are what they have now. If you can, if you see the T10s or the T12s, again, I forget which ones they are. It's the fatter ones back here. I don't know if you can see that. Well, I can't move it. Go for the T8s. They will save you money in the cost of electricity, and they're a little bit brighter. So you want to get the T8 bulbs, and these are just going to stay on for 18 hours when you're germinating. You're going to cut it back after 5 to 7 days to 16 hours, and you can cut it back even further. This is the setup that you need for seed starting. So you need a starting mix. You need your different ways to grow them. You can grow them in the pressed peat pellets. You can put in starting mix in here, and you want to put them into a tray so that you can bottom water. And again, if you get to feeding, don't overlove these plants with too much food. You're going to damage the root system that way. So I hope this gives you a great idea of how you can start seeds indoors. You're going to save a lot of money. It's not that difficult. Cost-wise, just let me give you some idea. This whole setup that I'm holding here, if you go and try and buy it as a vegetable grow light or a garden grow light, you're going to pay 2 or 3 times more than you need to. If you just go to the Home Depot, if you go to Lowe's, you can pick up these materials, and you can probably build this right here from anywhere from $20 to $30. That's pretty cheap, and it's going to be able to be used year after year after year before you have to replace the bulb, so the cost is really economical. So for 2018, think about seed starting. You're going to save yourself a lot of money. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please check out my seed shop at www.therustedgarden.com. You can find seed starting supplies there. You can find neem oil. I'm selling a t-shirt now, and you can also get just about anything you need to get your garden started and take care of it. Thanks for watching.